page created. This is the HTML page that we created in the previous video. You may want to style it. So before we style it, I'm just going to add a couple tags. I'll start out with a level 1 heading. You just type in H1 and hit tab. With Emmet support, it completes the tags for you, which is nice. And I'll just say this is a demo page. And maybe I want to style this not the default. Let me show you one extension you can add into VS Code that will allow you to view your web page inside of a browser. So I'm going to come down here to this icon, click that icon, and I'm going to look for something called Live Server. And if I look for something called Live Server, you'll see it here. If I click on it, it's made by Ritwick Day, over 26 million downloads, so fairly safe, I would assume, to download and install that. Used by a lot of people. And you just basically click the install button here. I've already have it installed, so I have the uninstall option. But if you click that and install it, what it'll let you do is basically anywhere inside your web page or over here in this Explorer tab, you can right click on your page here or right click inside your code here, and you can say open with Live Server. And the hope of that is that you can actually see your development as you're going along. So here's this web page opened in a web browser. What I'm going to do is leave that off to the right and put my code off to the left. And we'll see that as we type, because that's running down here, and you can see that it's running, it'll have a port, and then port 5500 is the name of the port. Now this address up here is local to your machine. You can't see it. If you gave it to someone else on the web, they couldn't see it. But it's running on your local machine on port 5500, and there's the name of the file, which matches the name here that we're seeing. And watch as I start to type. I don't see the changes until I hit Command S or Control S on a Windows machine, or Command S on a Mac, or you can go up to File and choose Save. I don't recommend that. Memorize how you're supposed to save a file on your operating system. You'll save yourself a lot of time. So anytime you make a change in your web file in VS Code, you'll see this little icon up here changes from an X to a solid circle. And as soon as I hit Command S on a Mac, notice over here that this will update automatically. So Command S, and notice that it updated automatically. Pretty cool little preview of your work if you install that extension. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the 1, 2, 3 and hit save again, and you'll see that it updates. But let's say that I want to style this now, something other than just the basic syntax, the basic styling, the font size, the font color that my browser assigns to a default H1 tag. And so what I'm going to do is basically, I've really got 3 options to style this. The first one I could do is I could add a style attribute inside this H1 element called style, and in that I could style this H1 any way I want. I could say, well, I want to change the color to pink. And as soon as I save that, you'll see that this updates, and now I've got a pink H1 tag. We call that inline styling. Not recommended, because if I wanted to style more than one thing pink, I've got to go into every element that I want that style to have, and I have to copy and paste this into each one. So we don't want to do an inline style. I'll save that and reload. The other option sometimes you'll see is in the head tag, you'll see a style element, and inside that style element, you'll see some CSS styling. So you'll see a selector, let's say it's H1, and then open and closed curly braces. And then you'll see in here the CSS rule. So if I do that and I save it again, you'll see that that will also apply this CSS rule to all of my H1 tags inside this document. Again, not a preferred way to do it, because if I want to apply this style to H1s in other files, I would have to copy this CSS rule into each file. And so you don't have much reuse if you do that. So don't do that either. That's not a recommended way to do it. The best way to do it is to actually go inside the head tag and add a link element. So if I just type in link and hit tab, that'll allow me to create an external file that will be a CSS file. And in that external file, external to my HTML, I can add all of my CSS rules that I want to have for my website. So I'm going to open up the Explorer here, and it's common to have your styles in a separate folder from your HTML. So I'm going to go up here and click on New Folder, and I'm going to add a folder called Styles. And inside that folder, when that's selected, I'm going to click New File, and I'm just going to call this, we'll just call it maybe our default.css. So we'll go ahead and give it a .css extension so that VS Code knows how to help us out, again with that IntelliSense feature. So inside the CSS file, and what I'll do is I'll kind of position these left and right. Hopefully we can get both of them on the screen here. And what I want to do is I want to still reach out to this H1 tag, and I want to add a CSS rule. So H1 will be the selector. It'll be an HTML selector. And we'll discuss later that there are multiple types of selectors in CSS. This is the default HTML selector. You don't need to add the tag around the HTML element, but just the name of the element. And then inside those curly braces, you can add whatever styles in here that you want to assign to that HTML tag. In this case, I wanted to change the color to pink. So notice that I have the CSS property separated by a colon, and then the value. So they're basically name value pairs, we call it. And as soon as I save that, it'll not apply immediately. And the reason is this link tag that we added doesn't yet reference this file. So what we need to do is we need to basically have a link from the index.html page to the styles subfolder to this default.css file. So we're going to have to kind of tell it, hey, that's what we want to do. We want to go to the styles. And notice as I start typing styles, I'll get a little pop-up that'll ask me, oh, are you trying to go to the styles subfolder? I'm just going to hit enter. And then it'll automatically look inside that subfolder for me and find all the files available. Well, we only have one right now, so I'm going to hit enter again. And now that I'm linking a style sheet from my HTML to the styles subfolder to the default.css CSS file, I'm going to save that, and when this reloads, you'll see that it automatically links this style sheet to this HTML page and applies those styles that we had in here. Again, we just said go out to the H1 elements in this file and apply this color to them. And so now if we had another H1 file or element, we could call it demo2. I'll hit save. Notice that it'll apply all of those same styles to every H1 that it finds in here. We'll add one last one and hit save, and notice that it applies that to each one. So that is the preferred way to add a CSS file and to add styles to your HTML page.